a great day, I'm feeling good. Oh, the possibilities of what I could.
What happens when a blind man, a woman of color, and a child of immigrants get together to discuss how diversity, inclusion, and equity affect your business?
I'm moving fast. Oh, I'm optimistic.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Choose Inclusion podcast. I'm UB and I am the Latino white guy of the group.
I'm Nina. I am the woman of color in the group.
And I'm Mike. I'm the blind guy.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Choose Inclusion. My name is Mike Hess, and as always, I am joined by my esteemed co-hosts, Nina and Ubaldo. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, how are we doing today?
Pretty good. It's
this
recording Friday, it's kind of nice.
Yeah, record our first recording post inauguration day 2021. So
And we're going to be talking about one of the things that excites me the most in this world, accessible technology. So I'm just like, let's dive into this conversation. But I guess, Mike, you should probably introduce our guest first.
Yes, well, I think that's actually a great segue, Dina, because your amazing or TEDx talk that you gave on accessible technology being good for everybody is exactly why we're talking to our guest today, Mr. Nick Lum, who is the CEO and founder of the BLine Reader. Nick, good morning. How are you? Welcome to the Choose Inclusion podcast.
Good morning. I am super excited about the conversation as well.
Well, I want to dive right in, but tell us a little bit about yourself. Because again, you didn't start your career as an assistive tech entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
That's right. I actually had my first career as a corporate lawyer. And that's not the normal path into assistive technology, but I spent 7 years doing that. And toward the end there, I launched an idea I had for a side project, and it became much more popular than I had expected. And I ended up quitting the law in order to follow that passion and to explore what it means to read and how to help people read more easily across the spectrum of reading ability. And that's what I do now.
So, I want to dive right into the technology that you've built because UB and I have been using it. We're both huge fans of it. And I think it'd be great for you to tell everyone like what you built, how you built it, why you built it, what its impact is. And we're going to have a lot of other questions afterwards, but maybe you can start by giving us the ground floor.
Yeah, so the basic idea of this BLine Reader is that the way we read on screen has basically been a replication of the way we read on print. When people were designing what text display would look like on screen, it was essentially mimicking what text looks like on a piece of paper. And that works, but it turns out there are ways that you can make a screen better to read on than a piece of paper. And what got me thinking was, how could a screen be better than a piece of paper? What can we do to improve the reading experience and surpass what we experienced with paper? And so I was thinking about ways that you could do that and things that a screen can do that paper can't do. And one of those things is color. You can costlessly change color and have many colors on screen, where with paper, it's expensive to print in color, and you can't change the colors once it's been printed. It's just sort of static, has to be the same for everybody. And I was thinking about ways in which you could use color to improve the reading experience. And I came up with this idea that you could use color gradients that pull your eye between lines. So the color at the end of one line would match up with the color at the beginning of the next line. And the colors above and below that line would be different, so that when you pull your eyes to the left side of the screen, there's one line that has the same color of text. You can think of it like a thread that you're following, and your eyes are just immediately drawn to that. And so I had this idea and put together a prototype, and I looked at it and I thought, that seems to work. I'm sure I'm biased, so I'll need to get some other opinions. But for me, this seems like it works. And all of my initial beta testers were friends of mine from college or from law school. and they really enjoyed it. And then I launched it onto the internet. And it was at that point that I heard from a much broader variety of people, including many people with learning differences or vision impairments, who found it to be incredibly helpful because it turns out that for them, return sweeps, which is the scientific term for when you move your eyes from the right side of a screen to the left, return sweeps were actually a problem. They would miss sometimes, get lost or distracted, and that this technology that I'd thought up was incredibly helpful for them, not just a way to be able to read somewhat faster or somewhat more easily, and it was making a huge difference in their lives.
It's so fascinating to me, and I want for the audience, like I want to give them some like a starting point understanding. So, can you talk a little bit about night mode? Because I think most people are certainly aware of night mode on their phones or even in certain applications on their computers. But so, how does this kind of take us to the next level? And I also, I love that this didn't necessarily come from this space of trying to solve a problem for people with visual impairments. Like to me, and again, back to kind of what Nina talks about in her TEDx talk and what you talk about, I think too. But and we always talk about like accessibility for all. So can you kind of make that connection?
Yeah, like you say, many people are familiar with night mode and the way that it can improve the experience of being on a computer, reading on a computer. And the idea of changing the sort of colors of text display or of a screen in general, um, so that it doesn't have the sort of default white background with dark colored text or other elements. That's sort of like the gateway drug to what we do. Because if you've seen night mode, um, you're familiar with the idea that things can look very different and be better. And what we do is also very different. It changes the way the text looks in a pretty dramatic way. But it takes most people just a few seconds to understand what's happening and to realize that they like it better. And we also support night modes within our tools. You can change whatever colors you want within our tools. And for example, use a night mode so that the background color is dark and the color of the text floats between various different light colors. And I know a lot of people use this, a lot of students use this late at night when they're reading and they're preparing to go to bed, and they don't want to have a screen full of white light staring them in the face. And for the same reason that you do that with night mode, you do that with tools like ours as well, to assist with visual tracking while also enjoying the benefits of a night mode.
Yeah, so I want to talk to the audience a little bit about like how they can get this app, because I think being able to look at the app while they're listening to this conversation, if it's possible, will also kind of help them understand it. So this is actually a plugin. Well, I mean, one of the ways you can access it, and I think the easiest way to start getting a taste of it is through, it's a browser plugin called BLine Reader. And once that plugin's installed, that's when it actually, like, it reads every single website that you're on, and it will literally change the color of the text on your screen. And then you actually have the ability to choose what that color gradient looks like. So there's a couple different themes. There's a bright theme, there's a blue theme, a dark theme, a gray theme. So if you're colorblind in a lot of different ways, this actually is really helpful because you can choose which kind of color gradients you want. You also have the ability to change the size of the fonts on those different web pages. And then one of the things I also think is really cool is that there's actually a font that makes things a lot more readable for people with dyslexia. And they use a open dyslexic font that you can toggle on and off as well, and that literally changes the font of everything that you're reading on the screen. And so I've been using it. I've been using the blue gradient because I find that to be the most comfortable for my eyes. And one of the things that that you talked about, because it's, obviously great for people with who are colorblind. It's obviously great for people who have dyslexia or kind of struggle with some maybe different cognitive abilities. But for me, it's actually led to me being able to read faster. And that was really cool. I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that too.
Yeah, you're right that it's good if people can look at this while they're hearing it. It's hard to describe visually. I'm sorry, hard to describe verbally, much easier visually. And people can go to our website, which is BeelineReader.com, and see what the text looks like on the site and see how it works. And then also just click on like the Chrome icon and download the Chrome extension, which is totally free to try out, by the way. So anyone can just take a look at that and see how it works. And as you mentioned, you can change the colors and customize it in a lot of different ways. And you're absolutely right about people with color blindness. It turns out my co-founder is actually colorblind, and so it is something that people use in that way. And it's always interesting to talk to folks about their specific experiences with it because people perceive the world in different ways. And it is something that has a range of benefits. The initial idea was for a way to improve reading speed. As someone who worked in corporate law, I spent a lot of time reading on screen, and speed is important to be able to churn through your reading material faster. Means you're more efficient. It means you get more work done. It means you can go do something else faster, whether it be personal or just more work. And so that was the original idea. And the tools are used by people who are very skilled readers. Were used across Ivy League institutions. Stanford has adopted our technology campus-wide to provide their students and also faculty with access to it. So it is used by some people who are very, very skilled readers. But at the same time, what we learned when we first launched it onto the broader internet was that this was a really big help for some people with learning differences. And the way that they describe how it helps is illuminating for people who don't have those issues. Some people will say it stops the words from bouncing around on the page. And if you have dyslexia, that might make sense to you. And if you don't have dyslexia, there's a good chance that doesn't make sense to you. Why would words bounce around on a page? But this has a calming effect on that and can stabilize things visually for people who otherwise have a lot of difficulty with it. But it's been a really interesting experience to talk with people from a variety of different backgrounds and see how it helps them in different ways. And as you mentioned, we do have tools like plugins for websites. We also have a PDF plugin, as well as an iOS app that people can use on iPads to read Kindle books and things like that. And then we also actually integrate our technology with other companies. So our technology can be made available on pretty much any platform where text exists, so that people can use our technology with that platform without having to install a plugin. So that's what we're focused on right now, is getting it integrated natively so that people can use it in the most seamless way.
Nick, I really dig it. Obviously, being blind my whole life, but when in my younger days, when I was just legally blind, I leveraged a lot of high contrast modalities that were out there, because that really did help, what vision I had, be able to make it more usable. So, and do you mind getting just a little techie on this, like how your technology? I know you have this is patented in technology. So, but do you mind talking a little bit about what this actually does? From the HTML or CSS side, do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure. We have a JavaScript that powers all of our tools that are web-based, and it goes through and applies the color gradient to the text. And then when the user resizes the window, if the text moves around, if it reflows, then instantaneously we reflow the coloring through that once the text has settled. And even though JavaScript is not the fastest language out there, if the only thing you're doing is coloring text, it's actually really, really fast still. So we can color, 3,000 words in the blink of an eye. So it's very fast. And there are actually even faster ways that it can be done when it is integrated natively, as I mentioned, which is what we're focused on now. And that way each platform can take our JavaScript and use it as a guide for what it's supposed to look like, and they can implement it in the fastest way for their platform, so that it's the most performant there. But so far, all of our partners just use the JavaScript because it is pretty fast to begin with, and so it's quite easy to use. We've had people integrate the JavaScript in like 30 minutes, so it's a pretty easy lift to get it onto a platform, and it works with all types of browsers. I think we tested even with like Internet Explorer, pretty far back. And the reason we do it as a JavaScript as opposed to doing it in CSS is because at the time that we made that decision, you would have lost some browsers doing it different ways. And we didn't want to leave anybody behind. We wanted this to be something that worked on any browser. And it'll actually even run on browsers running on feature phones. So like a really old Nokia can actually run this technology in a performant way too.
So we can add time traveler to your to your company's features. I love that.
We tested it with an emulator. We don't actually have Nokia phones.
Well, so the UN has been very interested in a lot of the work that you've been doing. Why is that? Like, what's their draw?
Well, the UN has their Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and a couple of them are relevant to the work that we do. One relates to education, another to inclusivity and not leaving anyone behind. And so we were recognized a couple of years ago at the UN Solutions Summit, where they choose 10 technologies from around the world, and they recognize the alignment they have with the SDGs and how they're helping to improve the world. And we were the only technology selected from the US, which was an incredible honor. And we met some wonderful people from there, including Megan Smith, who was on the selection committee. She was the CTO under Obama, and a former Google executive. And she really loves the technology. She has what she describes as a little dyslexia, and so I think it's really helpful for her and for many other people who are on their selection committee, which is crowdsourced among people around the world. And we were really glad to be able to meet so many folks through that experience and to hopefully collaborate with them. Other people who are looking to move things forward in a social impact way.
I got to know a little bit about your crystal ball too, though, Nick. Like, so since you've had so much success with this, like, what's the few? Well, okay, so I got two questions. One is, how did you get to Beeline Reader, right? So, and then, what is your crystal ball? I mean, now that you're obviously touching markets and lives that you truly didn't think you had. I mean, has this spurred your creative uses? Do you mind give us a little bit of crystal ball of what Beeline Reader is doing?
Well, those are really kind words. I sort of think that this was the only good idea I'll ever have in my whole life. So I don't know that I'm so much a crystal ball as just a clock that's right, once a day, a broken clock, like they say, twice a day. But we will have some new things that we do in terms of the algorithm and the way things are structured. But for now, the big focus is just getting people used to reading on screen in more efficient ways, in ways that look a little bit different, but can be more enjoyable, more efficient, and much more accessible. We're launching partnerships with other companies. We're really excited about the Insight browser, which is a new web browser coming to iOS and to other platforms that supports extensions. And this is so critical for people in the disability community who rely on browser extensions for their desktop browser, but have not been able to use extensions on mobile because it's not supported in Safari and Chrome, which are obviously the two main mobile browsers. And Insight browser is a startup that's coming out of Y Combinator, which is sort of like the Harvard of startup accelerators. And they are building a web browser that has extensions, and we're going to be one of those extensions from their inception, from the launch that's coming up. And we're really excited to see what they do to change the way mobile browsing works and help personalize it and make it more enjoyable for people. So that's one of the things that we have on tap. I can't look too far around the corner, but I know we're getting a lot of traction in the education publishing space. And even talking with some of the big technology companies about how we can work with them to improve the accessibility of their tools. So hopefully 2021 will have some more news to share. We're just getting started here, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I imagine COVID and this transition to work from home has really helped. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's, obviously COVID caught everyone by surprise, and distance learning has been one of the biggest challenges that's come up, um, and obviously work from home as well. But for students who are not used to spending so much time on screen, it presents a challenge. And it's actually interesting. This is, in my mind, it has created some silver linings for uh, people with assistive technology needs, because previously they were not getting fully met, and now there's actually so many people who are saying, oh, I'm suffering from screen fatigue. I really can't stand spending so much time on screen. And those voices are joining the existing voices of people who have had difficulties with spending so much time on screen, with reading on screen. And so tools like ours are being adopted into the schools and universities at a much higher pace, because the schools are trying to accommodate everyone. Everyone is having a hard time with reading on screen. And so they've realized that this is something that needs to be addressed. And that turns out to be extra helpful for people who have previously not enjoyed or not really thrived in an environment of reading on screen. So it is good in that way. And hopefully there will be stickiness, and distance learning will teach us a lot of things about how to improve the learning experience in a permanent way, not just when you're cooped up in your bedroom or in your parents' basement trying to learn chemistry.
Well, no learning chemistry for me, but but yeah, I mean, no, I think I think it's super fascinating, and I just love the impact of it, right? You never know what it's going to be, and I think that's a lesson that I would love the audience to hear and understand, is that on the surface it might look like just this Chrome extension, right? But in the end, I mean, it's the impact is so greater sometimes than you could have even imagined, and that's the beauty of some of this type of accessible technology that's out there. Is it may seem simple, but it's changing people's lives, and it's giving people the opportunity to belong, right? To be able to do what they want to do, particularly in a work setting where a lot of times organizations, they just can't understand how someone with a visual impairment or disability could work, when in reality it's sometimes a simple technology addition that can make that very possible.
And this is one of those things that like companies can actually do, right? Like they can act like, a big fan of Act with Your Wallet. Nick, companies can buy this in bulk for all their employees. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have site licenses for our Chrome extensions, and our tools. And if people have internal facing tools, we can actually integrate in the same way that we do with external facing products. Our JavaScript can be dropped into an internal platform. For example, someone recently said, I wish I could use this on my 360-degree reviews, because that kills me, having to read all that text. And so we can integrate with them in a technology way, or just using our existing tools.
So call to action to every company listening out there. Really simple thing to do to help all of your employees build accessible tech into what you're doing. Help all of your employees with screen fatigue in this time of remote work. Seems like a pretty easy ask to make happen.
And it's also cool because it can change how some people view assistive technology. As was alluded to earlier, this wasn't something that came up as an assistive technology tool originally, and it can open people's eyes to the need for and usefulness of assistive technology, and thinking about that early in the product cycle, as opposed to, oh yeah, we'll deal with that, at the end, we'll bolt that stuff on. It shows that there can be a benefit for all of your users if you think creatively about ways to improve the user experience.
I love it, Nick. I really do. And obviously being blind my whole life, I look at assistive technology in a slightly different way. But my son was actually tested about 2 grades ago for reading comprehension, and he was used with some of my friends that they leveraged first just straight up reading, and when he just straight up read text, he was 1 grade level below where he was. And then when he used the technology, which just highlighted the sentences with a box, he was at reading his grade level comprehension. And then when he leveraged audio during his so listening to it, he was actually more than 2 grade levels ahead. And imagine that, because he was raised by a blind dad. And just recognizing that these kind of technologies actually they kind of level the playing field, because there are different amounts of visual learners, audio learners, kinesthetic learners out there, and you're not, just because you're blind doesn't, or you're not blind doesn't mean that you're not an audio learner. So I dig the fact that you're bringing this technology to bear for everybody, and I think everybody's going to benefit from it. So thank you for your contribution.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. And it just shows how different people's brains are and how we process things differently.
Well, awesome, Nick. Thank you so much. I'm glad we got a chance to chat about this and hopefully help spread the word on what you all are doing and what's coming up. Because yeah, it's incredible. So thank you for the time today. We really, really appreciate it.
It's been awesome to talk with you, and anyone who's interested can reach out via email. I'm Nick at BeelineReader.com, and always happy to talk with folks who are looking to make things more accessible and more efficient.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, audience. As always, chooseinclusion.com can get you to all the different streaming services where we can be listened to. So check it out. And we always thank you for tuning in. So we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Choose Inclusion podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can see closed captioning for this podcast on our YouTube channel. You can find us online on our website, chooseinclusion.com, and contact us on Twitter @chooseinclusion.